Hello and welcome to this four-part FinextraTV series. I'm Hannah Wallace, and joining me today is Mark Evans, Global Head of Cross-Border and Cross-Currency Payments at HSBC, and Roy Marsh, Global Payments Director at Finastra. Hello to the both of you. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today.
Hi Hannah, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks Hannah. Very good to see you. Thank you.
Really good to have you on. We're talking about the changing cross-border payments landscape, a really interesting one and a space that is rapidly changing. And that's really where I want to begin. Mark, perhaps you could highlight those drivers for change in this space today.
Yeah, I think, Hannah, we're operating against a backdrop of many large-scale industry changes. We've had the ISO program that we saw just deliver many changes in March and much more to come in the next 2 years. We have open banking evolved out of the UK and Europe, and we're seeing that now being exported to the rest of the world. And banks really working hard to try to determine how do we leverage some of those changes for our benefit and for the benefit of our clients. Mm-hmm. I think as a consequence of that, we're seeing many more non-traditional competitors enter into the payment space, and that's causing lots of challenges to traditional payment models and causing us to have to reevaluate how we go about supplying those services to our customers. And client behaviour and client requirements are changing too. We've got this increasing retail-like demand for speed, for transparency and for certainty.
All right, okay. And Roy, it'd be good to get your perspective on that as well.
Yeah, sure. We've seen in the industry for the last few years now the changes related to ISO 20022 being a big diversion, a big distraction actually, particularly for organisations needing to keep up with these new regulatory changes. So that the key for us now is to think, well, so where is that new world? Where are you going to be doing business with this stuff? There's lots of new things happening in that area. The banks also are talking about the new operators, so that the fintechs have driven this idea that you can do everything immediately. Mm-hmm. So, and that has been particularly key in the remittance world, in the business to, but less so in the business to business world, in the corporate world in particular. So the challenge we are thinking of is now, where are the corporates going to take? Is this going to bleed into the corporates? Are they going to require now for you to be doing things on a much more 24/7 basis without any of the previous frictions that were involved? So we're also interested in seeing the fact that because ISO allows for so much more information to be available, there's a greater challenge in the world of fraud, in audit, in taking the tracking through, giving that experience to the customer, AML sanctions, all of the other things that need to support payments. How is that going to, we're interested to see where that's going to go in the world. And what we also, I think, is seeing is that none of this appears to be being driven by the hyped technologies, crypto, stablecoin, cloud, you name it, these things. These are enablers, they're important, and we've got to watch them. Mm-hmm. There's a business drive now that needs to change, and we see the end of ISO coming, so where are we going to go now?
All right, that's interesting. Thanks for setting the scene for us there, and good to get both perspectives. So what then is driving the need and indeed the demand for those faster cross-border payments, and what efforts are underway to enable those? And we'll come to you first, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. I think many more customers that we see across HSBC and other banks see as well, whether they're small business customers, sort of larger commercial or into the corporate space, they're rapidly modernising their business models, and they're increasingly going international, and that's driving a disproportionate growth in payment volume. And actually it's causing us to have more payment volume and perhaps smaller ticket sizes, much more retail type experiences. Additionally, we still see the growth in platform providers and marketplaces who are also operating borderless models, wanting to run their operations 24/7, and really driving an explosive growth in the need for cross-border payments and the certainty and transparency and speed that we know needs to come with them. Roy's already touched on some of the items that are being looked at in terms of how we go about addressing that, from modernising and enhancing the traditional models that we've relied on for many years, and there's lots of innovation in that space still to come. We've seen Swift GPI bringing payment tracking and pre-validation services to really improve the transparency of payment processing and reduce errors and improve STP rates. But we do have to come still what's going to happen with stable coins, what's going to happen with CBDCs, or maybe even the creation of closed loop networks, which allow you to move money very, very rapidly around the world.
All right, thank you for that, Mark. And Roy, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, so we see, we work with banks all around the world. So we're seeing now the adoption of 24/7 capabilities. Many of the major currency countries, let's use that phrase, are working with real-time capabilities in their domestic world. Their ACHs are becoming closer to real-time and often mixing. Even the RTGSs as well. So in the UK, the CHAP system now is virtually immediate. And also all of these things are adopting, along with SEPA later on this year in terms of the adopting ISO related capabilities. So if you take all of that drive in terms of the 24/7 capability and the fact that COVID has meant that way less cash is now involved, people are gravitating, trusting, and becoming confident in the use of wallets and that are provided by fintechs and less so perhaps by banks as yet. But you combine it with all this new information that ISO presents you. You kind of move away from the idea. I often think as a consumer, if I take a debit card on holiday, I'm based in the Sterling area. If I go to a Euro and I take a debit card with me, my bank account gets hit up with the charge every time I use it, and I feel really upset and annoyed about that. Whereas if I adopt a card through one of the fintechs, everything seems way easier. It's seamless. I may still be being paid, but it doesn't paying the same amount of money, but I don't feel it, and therefore I feel like there's a more of a seamless experience. And this seamless approach seems to me to be feeding everything that we're talking about here, and how do we work with that going forward?
That's interesting, and I think you have touched on some of the challenges in this space as well, and that's really where I want to go to next and take a step back. What do you think have been the barriers and indeed the frictions to cross-border payments up to this point, and what should be the response here? What can we do to improve those efficiencies and also improve transparency? Mark?
Yeah, sure. I think historically there's always been multiple participants in the payment chain. And those multiple participants mean there's many moving parts, more opportunity for errors, perhaps more opportunity for charges to be deducted, meaning that the beneficiary doesn't always receive the original principal amount, and that causes tension between buyer and supplier. And we don't want to be creating tension between our customers. Also, I think the very fact that customers are wanting to go 24/7, yet we still have in-country operating hours and in-country cut-off times, just creates some tension that we need to resolve in order to really open up 24/7 processing globally.
Yeah.
And Roy, what do you think there should be the response here?
Yeah, I mean, if as a bank you've chosen the full adoption of ISO 20022 rather than a truncated version of that with maybe some workarounds, then you've got an opportunity here to provide something which is way more beneficial for the customer. Now, in the past, that's been hard to do, right? There's lots of friction related to that information. It was always the case that as a customer making a payment, as a corporate making a payment, you knew who you were, you knew your bank account, but you didn't know at all where the intermediaries were, who the correspondent was on the other end. You just hoped that in the end that the beneficiary would get the money. And you get some kind of acknowledgement back eventually to say, but now you can do this and you can connect these things up a lot more. So it leads us to the idea that it's no longer good enough for a bank to say, we've got an STP process of 98% internally, which I know a lot of our customers achieve. But that just means from the moment the customer says it to the point that it leaves the bank. We think now there's a drive for STP across the entire customer chain, and we're getting closer to this kind of approach to say when the customer releases the payment, the beneficiary gets the payment throughout, everybody can see where the chain is, and if there's a problem, in particular if there's a problem, we can see where that problem is. We're not having to start from the beginning, working all the way through and trying to track down where that problem is, so the whole thing becomes a lot simpler to to process. But it's a customer approach to it.
Yeah.
Mark,
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
And that journey is not just the payment execution, it's 360-degree view of the payment, right back to the payment reconciliation on the sender side. Increasingly, that's how our customers are looking at it.
That's really interesting, and taking everything into account. And as we said at the beginning, there is no doubt this is a rapidly changing marketplace. So what I'm interested to hear then, what are those benefits to partner collaboration, and how does that help stay competitive in this market as well?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic. Historically, there's been, I think, a misconception now that banks and fintechs were somehow in competition. I think now that world has changed an awful lot. We each have our strengths, we really do, and by bringing those strengths together, leveraging what we both have, we create an outcome for our customers that's far superior than if we try to do it all on our own. So it's really now about collaboration, it really is. At HSBC, we have a very active program in this space under banking as a service, and we're working very hard with partners and platform providers to really embed our payment products in places where our customers can really easily discover them, go on to consume them, and really accelerate and improve that client experience. And more broadly across the organisation, we've got over 1,000 partnerships with vendors, fintechs of different shapes and sizes, covering our retail bank, our commercial bank, and right up to our corporate banking customers.
Wonderful. And Roy, what about that?
Yeah, terrific. I mean, I think for us, there was for many years, collaboration has been we make software and sell services, and you give us money. Right? That's the actual reality of collaboration over the years. But with all of this new capability coming together, the thing that really excites me is the ability to bring our banking customers together and be the technology enabler in the middle, so that the customer gets the full end-to-end experience. And we can only really do that. We've, for a few years now, operated an ecosystem where we bring out partner companies, the smaller fintechs in the world. We probably are the largest of the fintechs in being a pure play software company, but nonetheless, to bring the smaller fintechs into our ecosystem to give the opportunity for our customers to be able to attach and integrate to them easily. That's been something we've done for a while, but now we're trying to move that. Mark mentioned banking as a service, these things where we can bring that kind of collaboration and pull together everybody across the whole industry for the benefit ultimately of the customer.
Wonderful. What I'm hearing is collaboration is key, and we'll leave it there. Mark, Roy, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. It's been really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Hannah.